All right, so good morning and welcome to the May edition of the Livingston Diversity Council's online learning series, Learn, Live, Livingston, a dive into diversity, advocacy, economy, and empowerment. We just have a few brief slides to talk a little bit about the Diversity Council and a few acknowledgements before we get started today. First off, we want to give a huge thank you to our Champion for Change partner, St. Joe's. St. Joseph Mercy Livingston has jumped on with the Livingston Diversity Council for the 2021 calendar year as our Champion for Change partner, which means that not only are they financially supporting the work of the Livingston Diversity Council and making training sessions like these possible, but they are also doing their own work. They have an internal work group identified as a Diversity and Inclusion Council, and there is some cross representation on both the D&I Council for St. Joe's and the Livingston Diversity Council Board of Directors. So we want to give a shout out to St. Joe's for their support. Also, a quick thank you to our Livingston Diversity Council Board of Directors. Certainly, the work of the group is done by many, and sometimes during these sessions, you might only see a few of us, but know that there are a ton of folks back behind all of these efforts and supporting and doing the background work as well. So thank you to our Diversity Council Board of Directors. Also, specifically, Livingston Diversity Council's Training Community Action Committee. The training committee began back in May of 2020 with the idea of hosting some sort of educational series or educational sessions around the work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. And that was how these Learn, Love, Livingston series sessions were born, was out of that training committee. So a special thank you to those that represent our training community action committee of the Livingston Diversity Council. So the Livingston Diversity Council was established in 1987, and it's interesting because a lot of folks are surprised when they hear that we have a Livingston Diversity Council, and they're floored when they hear that it was an organization that started back in 1987. But the calling was there nationally, locally, statewide to do something to address things, to address wrongs that were happening within our communities. And so the Diversity Council was born out of just that group of intentioned citizens that wanted to see a change and wanted to let folks know that what was happening within our community was not representative of our entire community. So the Livingston Diversity Council, for the 34 years that we've been in operation, has of course gone through changes, as most organizations do, but we still operate very much as a grassroots organization within the community, supported by the work of unpaid volunteer board of directors. Recently, the Diversity Council has retooled our mission and our vision statements, and you see those on your screen. The mission of the Livingston Diversity Council is to be a change agent for diversity, equity, inclusion, and access that collaborates, educates, and empowers to build a thriving community. We know that the work goes well beyond the board, goes well beyond our community action committees. It really takes the work of the entire community to work together. And so we need to, in order to achieve those goals, we need to collaborate and empower others to be a part of the work that's going on. Our vision statement is that Livingston County will be a transformative community that embraces and empowers all people for their uniqueness and for their contributions. And so I always joke around that we kind of cheated with our updated vision statement, because your vision statement is supposed to be where you land, where you end up. And for us and for the work that's done, we know that it is a never-ending road. It is a journey that we're all on, and no one will ever achieve diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. We know that we will always be working, we will always be learning. And so the goal is really to just accept that truth and to be ready and willing to transform as needs arise to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our entire community. So just a few things, learn more and connect with us. Of course, visit us on our website and feel free to email if you're looking for more information. Also, please, if you're on social media, follow and interact with us on our Facebook and Instagram pages. We have two that we operate at Livingston Diversity and at Pride Alliance Livingston. So feel free to follow us and engage with us that way. Okay, so now on to the topic for today. Today's topic is allyship, what it is, and how to show up. So today's facilitator, you're stuck with me during the entire session today. No guest facilitator here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Nicole Matthews-Creech. I have my master's in family life education from Western Michigan University, and I am a certified family life educator. My goal in education was always to work on prevention, never really to do the clinical social work kind of thing. I was always really interested in the macro level work, which really leads nicely into systems and social change. I am currently and have been for the past 10 years the board president for the Livingston Diversity Council. It is certainly a position of honor that I take very seriously, and really since February of this year, I've been able to dedicate my attention to this role full-time as I left a position in the social work field that I held for the last 21 years working at La Casa as the Director of Social Change Advocacy. So my role at that, in that position is very similar, I feel, to the role that I serve as the board president for the council. All of the things that were important then are important here. The education, the awareness, the engaging with folks and having conversations and working together as a community to make lasting systemic change. And a lot of that systemic change really starts with us. It starts with us personally. It starts with our relationships interpersonally and moving forward into our organizations, our institutions, and our systems. So I'm really excited to be able to walk through this information with you today. Okay, so for today, we have a group agreement that we would like folks to just appreciate, hold on to, acknowledge as we work through the content for today. So the first part of our group agreement is to acknowledge the limitations of our experiences. And I will start letting you know as a facilitator in this work, I know that my experiences are limited. I know that I am not the expert in all things social justice, in all things allyship, in all things race equity work, and supporting our LGBTQ friends, family, and neighbors. So we know that we are limited in terms of our experiences. So acknowledging that and acknowledging us all as lifelong learners, not just those that attend the learning sessions, but also those of us that facilitate the learning sessions. We know that we are limited. We ask that folks attend to privilege today. And in fact, privilege is actually a specific topic of conversation that we'll be talking about today. Understanding the privileges that we bring to the table and understanding how that privilege impacts how we show up for other folks. And we'll talk a little bit more about privilege as we go through today's session. We ask that folks recognize intent and impact. We know that in this work, we are going to make mistakes. And so even though our intent is good, the impact may not necessarily be good. That doesn't mean that we should shame ourselves or each other for that. And there's a process certainly to recognize that impact of other folks and allow us to move forward. So we'll be talking more about that today as well. The make space, take space. Certainly, there will be some opportunities to have some conversations. Looks like we'll probably, based on our numbers of folks today, we'll do some large group conversations. Please make sure that you're making space for others to speak. And if you're not typically one that speaks up in these spaces, please feel free to kind of push yourself a little bit and take some space and speak out into the learning space today. avoid freezing people in time, including yourself. And what I mean by that, and this is my favorite group agreement piece, because I feel like we all really struggle with this piece of when we're learning and we're on these journeys, we oftentimes look back at what we have done in the past, our actions, our statements, our interactions with folks. And we look back and can't help but feel guilty, can't help but feel shameful, can't help but feel, at the very least, questioning about kind of having those what were you thinking moments of ourselves, and understand that we are all on our own journey and we're going to make mistakes along the way. And so don't catch yourself back there and say, wow, I really messed up back there, and don't get stuck there. You're moving forward, you're learning, and that goes for everybody else around you. Everybody else is on this journey. We're all in different places in that journey. So certainly being patient with yourselves and being patient with others is key in this work, but it's also one of the biggest challenges, I think. And lastly, the last group agreement is to push your learning edge. Just get a little bit uncomfortable. Ask the questions that you're a little hesitant to ask. In this work, we are learning things that we sometimes are ashamed that we didn't know before, and that does make us uncomfortable. But we learn the best when we are uncomfortable, even in academics. When we're learning a new math skill, it's uncomfortable, but as long as we lean into that, we learn better. And so that's what we ask of everyone today. Okay, so we are going to move forward with a centering activity. And so I'm going to ask that you watch both videos. We're going to watch one video. We'll go directly into the second video, as long as technology works the way that it's supposed to. And then after we watch the videos, then we will have just a discussion about those videos that we're going to be watching. They're both fairly short and fairly entertaining. So if there's an issue with the sound or the visuals on the video, please let me know in the chat box, just so that we don't run into any technical issues that we're not aware of. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
A word thrown around a lot. It inspires passionate debate and is worn like a badge of honor, and with good reason. Patriotism. There's a word thrown around a lot. It inspires passionate debate and is worn like a badge of honor, and with good reason. Because it means love and devotion for one's country. Love. For a word designed to unite, it can also be pretty divisive. You see, there's more to patriotism than flag sequin onesies and rodeos and quadruple cheeseburgers. Patriotism is love for a country, not just pride in it. But what really makes up this country of ours? What is it we love? It's more than just a huge rock full of animals like cougars and eagles, right? It's the people. Do me a favor. Close your eyes for a second. I want to try something out. Picture the average U.S. citizen. Think about it. How old are they? What's their hair like? How much can they bench? You got one? Okay. So chances are, the person you're picturing right now looks a little different to the real average American. There are 319 million U.S. citizens. 51% are female. So first off, the average American is a woman. Cool, huh? Is that what you pictured? 54 million are Latino, 40 million senior citizens. 27 million are disabled, 18 million are Asian. That's more people in the U.S. than play football and baseball combined. 9 million are lesbian, gay, bi, transgender, more than the entire amount of people that live in the state of Virginia. Around 10 million are redhead, 5.1 million play ultimate frisbee, and 3.5 million are Muslim. triple the number of people currently serving in the United States military. Almost half the country belongs to minority groups. People who are lesbian, African American, and bi and transgender and Native American, and proud of it. We know that labels don't devalue us, they help define us, keeping us dialed into our cultures and our beliefs and who we are as Americans. After all, what's more American than freedom to celebrate the things that make us, us? I mean, it's stitched into the stars and stripes of this country, from the Constitution to Gettysburg, to our motto, E pluribus unum, from many, one. It's even in our country's name, the United States. This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Love beyond age, disability, sexuality, race, religion, and any other labels. Because the second any of us judge people based on those labels, we're not really being patriotic, are we? So let's try this one more time. Close your eyes. Picture the average Joe or Joan or Juan or Jean-Luc. The real people who make America, America. And this year, whenever you feel the urge to don those star-spangled shorts, set off fireworks the size of my biceps to show love for our country, remember that to love America is to love all Americans. Because love has no labels.
Okay, it's our first video. We'll move into our second video.
And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. My love, my love, my love, she keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. She keeps me warm.
My heart doesn't see race.
Love has no age limit.
That's my best friend.
We are neighbors and best friends.
We all have different religions, but we have universal love as well.
I love my sister.
Love is love.
Our family is no less than any other family.
I'm not crying on Savi's patient. Love is kind.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for humoring me and watching the videos. You've gotten to see a couple of my favorites. So I would love to chat with all of you with a couple questions. And so my first question to you is, why do you think we chose to do a centering activity at the beginning of today's session? Why do you think a centering activity might be important in this work? You can feel free to speak into the space. You can also feel free to use the chat box if you would rather. Why a centering activity? Okay, so to begin with a common base, a common understanding, great. To set a certain mood, certainly. To get us into a learning space of what we're talking about today. To frame the conversation around allyship. To bring awareness to what allyship means, to broaden that perspective and that understanding of allyship in this work, right? It is hard to know where the focus needs to be. This is definitely something that I think all of us struggle with at some point of where do I focus my attention? Because there is so much that we could focus on. There is so much work that we can be doing. And so should we focus on allyship within race equity? Should we focus on allyship with our friends, family members, neighbors who identify within the LGBTQ community, right? Where does that allyship sit? And these videos help to center us on the fact that allyship crosses all of those lines, that allyship can be a part of the conversation, even surrounding things like gender-based violence, right? Things that you wouldn't typically associate with diversity, equity, and inclusion work. But gender-based violence falls under diversity, equity, and inclusion work as well. And so it centers us in framing that conversation. Great. So easier question. What was the most impactful for you, or what did you really enjoy about the videos that we just watched? Comments about the videos. Again, you can speak into the space or you can use the chat box.
Nicole, I really appreciate the statistics of the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I think that putting in perspective that over 50% of the population is female. Those are just some great statistics. I would like the link to the video if possible.
Absolutely, I'd be more than happy to share that. Great. And then we hear in the chat box, I like seeing the reactions of the audience in the second video, right? It makes you feel good, right? Just makes you smile. When you see other people smile, it makes you smile. And that's, a part of allyship. It's the very beginning stages of allyship, of course, but just being an ally is recognizing and acknowledging folks. Sometimes just that physical nod is a good start. Appreciated the misdirection of the first video, undermining the expectation that the average American would be a white male. Absolutely. And how many of us have those really good intentions in our head? And he says, picture the average American, and we go with somebody that looks like us. I mean, really, that is the traditional trajectory of that exercise, is we go with somebody who looks like us because we assume that we're average. And a lot of that assumption comes from our privilege and the ability to make that assumption and have it be a safe assumption. Plus, I have to say, John Cena's not bad to look at during the first video. That's my personal preference. The Same Love video really moved me. Absolutely. It gives me chills every time I watch it. And I have to say that I look for opportunities to share that video. Any possible time that I can, I think, what is it appropriate that I can put that on there? Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So a couple of folks are asking for the links to the video, to the videos, and what I would, if I don't remember to talk about at the end of today's session, there is a session evaluation that we're asking you to fill out to help us better these, to frame these conversations, to help us move forward with these conversations. So if you'd like information that was shared in today, please make sure to leave your name and your email address, and I will be sure to send that out to folks as you fill out your session evaluation. So there's a give and take in that. If you fill it out, you get the info later. Great. Anything else? Any other thoughts on the videos? Any other acknowledgements that you want to share about the videos? Okay, great. All right, we'll move forward here. So on to actually what we're supposed to be learning out today. What is allyship? So allyship is an active, consistent, and arduous practice of unlearning and reevaluating, in which a person in a position of power and privilege seeks to operate in solidarity with a marginalized group. A person in a position of power and privilege that seeks to operate in solidarity with a marginalized group. And we're going to go through the definitions of power and privilege in a little bit. Allyship is not an identity. I really like this statement. Allyship is not an identity. It is a lifelong process of building relationships based on trust, consistency, and accountability with marginalized individuals and or groups of people. When we say marginalized groups of people or marginalized individuals, what does that mean to you? Who do you identify as a marginalized individual or group? So I've waited the obligatory 10 seconds. So the marginalized individual, oh, I got a chat. Okay, let's see. Let's see what we see in the chat here. Okay, perfect. So Black, Indigenous, people of color, people that identify within our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning populations or communities, individuals with different abilities or disabilities. I hear everyone who's not a white man, right? That someone who doesn't have power and privilege, right? Person or a group of people that are marginalized, who do not have power and or privilege in certain situations, right? Great. So it's a lifelong process of building relationships with people, and relationships is really key in allyship. In order to be a good ally, in order to be the right kind of ally that that person needs at that time, kind of depends on your relationship with that person as well, right? Everyone needs or is looking for something different in allies. And so relationships are really key in determining what that allyship looks like with that particular individual, with that particular group, or that particular initiative that might be going on to address some inequities or issues of privilege there. I also like this part. Allyship is not self-defined. You don't get to say I'm an ally. You kind of have to prove yourself as an ally, right? Our work and our efforts must be recognized by the people that we seek to ally ourselves with. So if you are an ally for the LGBTQ plus community, you need validation from that group that you're an ally. They see you as an ally. Your behavior, your actions identify you as an ally, not your statement that you're an ally, right? Being an ally is so much more than just stating the fact. And, you know, on as you look at articles on allyship, there's some linked at the end of this presentation today. As you listen to podcasts, marginalized populations, folks that are representative of our marginalized populations, have so many examples of that a person has said, I'm an ally. And then when it comes to an interaction where they need someone to speak up for them, or they need somebody to stand with them, that person who's an ally isn't there. And so our allyship is really determined by our actions and the validity of the work as seen by those that we seek to ally ourselves with. So let's talk a little bit about power and privilege. So what is power? Power is the ability or official authority to decide what is best for others, the ability to decide who will have access to resources, the capacity to exercise control over others. Who has the power? We talked about who marginalized populations are. Who has the power?
I would say in the United States, it's the people of wealth, probably.
Okay. People who have wealth, people of higher economic status, class. Any other thoughts on who has the power? All right, in the chat box, I see upper administration, right? So in a workplace, a person who has power is in upper management, director level, right? People who have the money, for sure. Anybody else? Who else has power? I'll go back to our definition of marginalized populations, right? One of the answers was everyone who's not a white man. So perhaps who has power is someone who has the majority race, someone who has the majority ability. Bullies, person who takes the power, right? People who have power are the people that take the power and are systemically and societally enabled to take the power, in a position to have that power. Absolutely. So there's different levels of power, right? And so from that, we also saw some folks identifying that there's power in workplaces, there's power in our general society. So when we talk about power, there's different types of power, different levels of power. So you've got interpersonal levels of power, right? In a relationship, you have one person that typically can have more power than the other person in that relationship. So we see interpersonal power. We see, yep, Judy, absolutely. Elected officials have power, right? And that power is somewhat given to them, but they have to be in a position that they are deemed worthy of that power, right? And typically we don't see a lot of that, again, within marginalized populations. So we have interpersonal power, we have organizational power, we have institutional power, and we have systemic power. So power crosses all of those relationships and all of those organizational interactions that we have. So as we identify systems of power, right? That person who is an ally, in reference to our topic for today, a person who has power either because of who they are, has power for the role that they're assigned to, has power for the system that they represent, right? And so all of those things can give that person power in different levels of power. Okay. So what is privilege? Privilege operates on personal, interpersonal, cultural, and institutional levels and gains advantages, favors, and benefits to members of dominant groups at the expense of members of target groups. So another question. Who's the dominant group? In the United States, who's identified within the dominant group? Okay. In the chat box, I see white males, right? So you have race, a dominant race is white. You have a dominant gender of male, right? Dominant sexual orientation, person who identifies as straight or heterosexual, right? Cisgender, person who identifies with the gender that they were biologically assigned at birth. Neurotypical, person who falls along the lines of neurocentrism, that what is identified as the dominant neural functioning in society, right? Class certainly is a huge part of dominance in groups, right? People who are representative of the upper class or upper middle class are the dominant groups, right? Families with children, absolutely. Our traditions, our the way that our country was assumed to be set up, right? Is that this is how we're supposed to operate. Religion is another a person who is representative of the dominant culture of religion. Great. So all of those areas give us privilege. There is dominant groups, and each one of those dominant groups gives us privilege. So privilege is characteristically invisible to people who have it. And I would venture to guess that many of you here today have had those conversations with folks where privilege has become a very difficult topic to talk about. And part of that is because people who have privilege have a really hard time seeing that they have privilege. People in dominant groups often believe that they have earned the privilege that they enjoy, or that everyone could have access to those privileges if only they work to earn them, right? It's the everybody has the same opportunities in this country. That's what our country was built on. Everybody has the same opportunities. If you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you can make that work, right? People believe that they've earned the privileges that they are given, that they've worked really hard to get where they are, and no one is disputing that. But where they have privilege, it's made it easier for them to get where they are today. Privileges are unearned, and they are granted to people in the dominant groups, whether they want those privileges or not, and regardless of their stated intent. Absolutely. Facebook, social media, right? You just have to read a couple posts here and there, and you see folks really challenged by conversations surrounding privilege. So
Nicole, can I just mention something real quick?
Please. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that most people, I don't know if I would debate. I think it'd be an interesting discussion. Do people know that they're privileged or not? I think underlyingly, I think the white race knows they are, and that's why they want to keep where they're at. I think that there's an acknowledgement to privilege, except that, like you said, it has to, their whole statement is we've earned it and worked for it. So somehow that justifies, you know, where they're at and not having to be responsible or think about anybody else. But I kind of think that most people know they are privileged and they like it, right? And they want to keep it. So
Sure.
I think that'd be an interesting topic.
Yeah, absolutely, Claire. It is a really interesting topic, and it's a difficult conversation, because along with privilege, oftentimes comes the feeling that I have to feel guilty for my privilege, right? I don't know if I assume probably many of you have had that conversation where people have said, I've earned my privilege and I'm not going to feel guilty because I have it. Nobody's asking anyone to feel guilty. We're asking to attend to that privilege, to acknowledge what that privilege has afforded us in that particular situation. That it is that no matter what, if I don't have this level of privilege because of the group that I represent as a female, and if I don't have gender privilege, there are things that I just cannot achieve. Right. I can't pee standing up. I'm never going to have that privilege. It's unearned. You didn't earn that privilege. It just is what it is. And that's a weird thing to talk about is in terms of privilege, because that's not typically where your brain goes, but it's a really realistic example of where the disparities are, and that you, even if I wanted to, right, it's just not ever going to happen. And so I can work as hard as I can, but it's never going to be there. The state of the fact that privilege, again, is gender. And I speak from the lens of gender because that is one of the very few places where I don't hold privilege. I hold privilege in a lot of capacities. Where I don't hold privilege is gender. And I know that I can't go for a walk at nighttime and feel completely safe. That is a privilege that I will never have because society has set that up that way because of gender-based violence and patriarchy and misogyny. And that is the way that privilege is. And as hard as I work and as much as I change who I am or what I do or what I look like or how I dress, that doesn't give me privilege in that particular situation. So privilege is a tough conversation. And I think you're right, Claire. I think for those that do acknowledge that they have it, they do like it. And there's a sense or a fear that if they acknowledge it, that they're going to lose that privilege, right? So a person with power and privilege, going back to our allyship conversation, a person with power and privilege is utilizing those items, utilizing those things that are given to them in order to show up as an ally. Okay. So an ally's purpose. Why be an ally? What are we here to do? We're here to support and make use of our privilege and power for those we seek to work with. And again, it's across all of those marginalized populations, all across all the disparities. So whether we're looking at race equity or supporting our LGBTQ or disabilities communities, we are here and to support, and we make use of those powers and those privileges. We turn the spotlight we are given with our privilege away from ourselves and toward the voices who are continuously marginalized, silenced, and ignored. We give credit where credit is due. And it's a humble and weird space to be in. Because as white folks, we are socialized to be proud, to take credit for our work, to make sure that we're recognized. And that doesn't mean that we can't continue to do that as long as it is our work that we're asking to be recognized for. In this role of being an ally, our work is to support the work of others and to support the voices of others. We use opportunities to engage people with whom we share identity and privilege in conversations about oppression experienced by those we seek to work with. So we're using an opportunity to engage with people with whom we share identity and privilege. So I don't see all your faces, but I'm looking at names, and I know some of you that are on here, and there's a lot of us that share identities. We share a lot of identities. And with those identities that we share, we also share privileges, right? And so this work, the important part of this work as an ally is talking with folks who have those same privileges and those same identities as we do. So white people need to talk to white people. Women need to talk to women, right? And helping us to understand where we're at on that journey and connecting us to resources. So we're using these opportunities of our power and privilege to work with other folks that identify with those same power and privileges that we have. Okay, so how to be an ally? We're into the kind of second part, right? We talked about what allyship is, what it isn't. We'll kind of come into this. How to show up. This is it. How to show up. Be intentional on how you frame the work. Be intentional on how you show up as an ally. Know who and what you're showing up for. Who are you fighting alongside? And I underlined alongside because I think we have to be careful of the words showing up for or doing things for. I think our focus needs to be a little bit more on with instead of for or alongside. Because if we frame the work of allyship on doing things for other people, then we run the risk of saving or attempting to be the savior in this particular situation, right? That we run in and fix it. And that isn't our role as an ally. Our role is to lift up those voices and make space for those who we are showing up for so that they can move things forward. Right? So who are you fighting alongside, not for? So we have to be really, really careful of saviorship. Don't expect awards or special recognition for confronting issues that people have to live with every day. And I don't know that anybody really expects that consciously, but I think sometimes, and I have felt personally, I have felt a little sad or a little slighted when I've done something that I think was really cool and it's not acknowledged by the population for whom I'm showing up for. Not in a not in an outward way, right? It's my own little subconscious messing around with me a little bit, but like, wow, I guess I expected that they would be happier with that. Or I thought they'd be more excited about what we're doing, right? Have to be okay with what you're doing for you and not necessarily what you're doing for a marginalized group of folks, right? So because they're living with that every day and they show up every day and I get the choice to show up or not show up. I can take a hard day and say, I'm not doing it today. Redirect attention to the groups that you're supporting and the issues they face when you do. So when you do get recognition, when you do get accolades, when somebody recognizes the work that you do, make sure that you're still centering that recognition on the folks that you're supporting. And so if someone were to recognize the efforts of, let's say, our training committee on educating our community, right? My goal is to center that group, to say, you know, this group is done a really great job with supporting us. But I also want to center that around the folks that are attending the sessions, that are putting the time in to do the work, putting the time in to learn, and recognizing that that our focus is not necessarily on the successes that we've had, but on the work that's still yet to be done. Okay. So making sure that you're redirecting that attention back to the groups that you're supporting. This is why you're doing the work. Okay. Got a short little video that we're going to watch real quick. So you just heard him talk about performative allyship. And I think that this is where a lot of us start with learning how to be an ally. And again, this is a journey that we're learning as we go forward, but really understanding and hearing from folks about what they need from allies, right? And again, framing that intention of what is your intention? Is your intention to call attention to the issue? You can do that and you can gain that with performative allyship. But if your goal is to actually change things and lift up folks, then just retweeting something isn't accomplishing that goal. Any questions or thoughts on performative allyship? Right. Yep. Thanks, Beth. It's not about us. It is stepping up when the rubber meets the road. Right. It is not about what we can do or what we've been a part of, but when stuff goes down, this is where we sit. Right. Absolutely. Great. Okay. How to be an ally. Don't expect to be educated by others. This is, I think, a tough area that I navigate for me. I'm very tempted to ask questions of folks. And yes, you can ask questions, but also understand the purpose and the intent of those questions that you're asking and who you're asking those questions of. So initially, we need to start with doing our own research. Do your own research on the oppressions experienced by the people that you seek to work with. So again, if you are looking to support our LGBTQ+ community, or you are looking to support our disabilities community, that you do your own research. You start looking and watching podcasts or listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos and following folks on social media, and doing your own research, doing your own work. Fortunately for us, there is now a plethora of information out there available to start your own research on that. Once you've done your own research, recognize and understand the relationships that you do have, right? Talk with others in your circle. People that again identify with that same power and privilege that you have, and then identify with folks within your circle who might be representative of minoritized populations. Examine your relationship that you have with that person, and you may have that person that you can talk to and ask questions to. They may not be your person. Don't expect somebody to be your person. Some people are absolutely happy to be that for other folks. I have a few really gracious individuals in my life who are willing to answer questions for me, to help call me in and have conversations when we're learning or when I'm seeking to learn something. But I also have relationships with others who are not those people for me, who don't want to be those people for me, and it's not their role to be those people for me. Right? And you know that when you know what the relationship is that you have with that person. Yeah, Claire.
Yeah, you know what? I think, Nicole, too, that it's really important not to put people in a box as you develop relationships with people in different minority cultures. You know, to assume that all Black people support this, or all, you know, Asian people are going to support this. I think you have to be real careful as an ally that you assume that you know what every minority person thinks, and they're not the same either. So to put all in a box, I think allyship, that's why it's so important to have a relationship with the person first before you start asking some of those pointed questions, because we make a lot of assumptions of how somebody might feel that quite often are not true or don't go along with their group.
Absolutely. That's a really great point. And that actually brings me back to the first time I did this I had this conversation about allyship, and it was with a group of students from one of our local high schools. They asked me to come and speak on allyship, and I said, and I'm learning, you know, we all learn as we go. And I learned something that day. So I said, everyone needs something different. Right? Allyship to folks isn't always the same. And what a person needs from you, or what a person would like to see from you as an ally, is different. And I said, and I literally said, and that's really hard for us to know where we sit and what we can do. And then I caught myself, and I caught my own privilege in that statement, and I went, wow, I just said that being an ally for somebody is hard for me. I was like, wow, okay, stop, reverse, like that. And again, this is a journey, right? We're learning. And so it is hard, but it is a heck of a lot harder to not be able to choose to show up or to show up that day, because it is that person's identity, right? So yes, everybody needs something different, and being an ally is not the same, depending on the person, depending on the situation, depending on the cause, depending on, you know, what is being looked to be done in that particular situation. Listen more and speak less. You'll hear that. I think we hear that a lot. That you can't learn while you're talking, right? You can't learn when your mouth is open. Can't listen. Your ears and your mouth can't be open at the same time. Some people will battle with me and say they can totally do that, but listen more and speak less. Hold back on ideas, on opinions, on ideologies. Resist the urge to save the people that you work with. Again, kind of going back to that whole idea of saviorship. Listen and hear what it is that what role you can play as an ally in this particular situation. Listen, again, it goes back to learning, doing your own research. Listen to people's experiences fully. Check out local speakers, check out events, follow folks on social media, listen to podcasts. You'll notice that folks is spelled with an X. That's intentional. Folks spelled that way is a more inclusive term than the KS. And as we navigate gender identity, there are lots of new words. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, little plug for our June 16th Learn, Love, Livingston, all about our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning community. We'll talk more about folks with an X that day. So listen more and speak less. Actively acknowledge your privilege and power. So it's our group agreement for today. It's really an ongoing agreement for this work. Actively acknowledge your privilege and your power. Openly discuss and recognize that as recipients of privilege, we will always be capable of perpetuating systems of oppression from which our privilege came. So that's a mouthful. So attend to our privilege and understand that as we use our privilege, we oftentimes can supersede the needs of those that we are seeking to support or seeking to lift up, that we're using our privilege in this space and I'm the one that's being heard. I'm not using my privilege to lift other folks up. So acknowledge that and actively attend to where your privilege is allowing you to sit in these conversations. Build capacity to receive criticism. Be honest and accountable with our mistakes. We're totally going to make mistakes. I make mistakes every time. I'm going to watch this recording, I don't know, tomorrow, Friday, over the weekend, and I'm going to go, shouldn't have said it that way. Or I used my privilege in not the right way in that statement or whatever, right? So we're going to make mistakes. Recognize that being called out or called in, right? If somebody calls out and says, ouch, that hurt, or somebody calls you in and says, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how that impacted me. Look at that as a gift. Look at that as an opportunity to learn and to do better moving forward. It's an honor of trust to receive a chance to be a better person, that person is taking the time with you to call you in, to call you out in that conversation, to help you learn better. That's absolutely a gift. They're inviting you and helping you to be a better person, to learn, to grow, and to do things differently. So look at that as a gift and not as a criticism. Framing is super important. It can still feel kind of critical sometimes, and acknowledge that it hurts a little bit sometimes, but we also then need to acknowledge and move on, right? So acknowledge our missteps. Don't make them again. Once we do it, don't do it again. It's what I tell my kids all the time, right? If you say you're sorry and then you do the same thing over again, it doesn't make me believe that you're sorry. So apologize and move on. Apologies are important to do the right way. So apologizing is a really big part in being an ally, and apologizing well, right? So a good apology has a few key attributes that we want to make sure that we hit. A good apology is timely. It's delivered at the right moment in the right place at the right time. So if you are somewhere out in public and you make someone uncomfortable, you say something that you didn't mean, it comes off as not as you intended, or the impact was different than your intent. Understand that public space may not be the right space for that apology, or it may be. The medium that you're using at that time, if you're having a conversation via text and an offensive statement comes out, or what you intended was taken differently, a text response with an apology may not necessarily be the best way. It may need to be a phone call, right? So attend to that timeliness of your apology. And that person may not necessarily be ready to accept that apology at that time. So respect the boundaries. An apology is given when the person receiving the apology consents to it. They may need some space after you said what you said. They may need some space, and give that space to them. A good apology has self-awareness. Know that the act of the apology may not lead to the closure you expect. We hope that as an apology, the person goes, I accept your apology, thank you so much, and you can move forward together. Ideally, but they may not be ready to do that. And every once in a while, I catch my kids saying to each other, I don't accept your apology right now because I don't think that you're really sorry. And so we have a conversation about that, right? Know that apology may not get you what you want, and that's okay, because the apology isn't for you. The apology is for the person. It's reflective. It signals that the person apologizing is taking full responsibility for their actions. It's not an empty apology. It is, I acknowledge that I did this. I acknowledge that this is how it impacted you, and I want to make it better, and I want to do better, right? That it's reflective. So apologizing means letting go of your ego to show that you care about someone and you want to make things right. Good apologies center the person being apologized to, and they also take direct ownership of the actions that cause pain by naming them clearly, right? Being accountable. And they shouldn't, good point, Crystal, they should not have to comfort us when we're the one to make the mistake, right? That is not their role, because again, the apology is not for us. The apology is for our actions and for that other person. Thanks, Crystal, for that. Absolutely. Okay. How to be an ally, embracing emotions that come out of the process of allyship. Right? Understand that you're going to feel uncomfortable, that you're going to feel challenged, that you may feel hurt. This is inevitable. We don't learn when we're comfortable, right? So going back to our original group agreements, pushing your learning edge. We don't know everything, we never will. Don't expect closure is another thing that we oftentimes hear in this work, right? Don't expect it. It's going to be wrapped up in a nice little bow at the end of the session, or the end of the conversation, or the end of the initiative, or the end of the event. It's an ongoing work. So in order to embrace the emotions that come out of the process of allyship, speak from your own experience and your feelings, your own activity, your own behaviors. So when I talk about challenges with this work, quite often I'm talking about my own challenges with allyship, my own challenges, because that's what I know and that's what I experience. And I think probably some people experience the same, but I can't make that assumption, right? Because I know the privilege that I sit with. I don't necessarily know the exact privilege that you all sit with. So you can always go right by speaking from your own experience and your own feelings, and making sure that you're taking accountability for those. Our needs are secondary to the people that we seek to work with, right? So going back to even what Crystal just said about apologies, our needs are secondary. That apology isn't for us. That apology is for that other person. We are responsible for our self-care, and recognize that part of the privilege of identity is that we have a choice whether or not to resist oppression, whether or not to be an ally in a particular situation. We recognize that we have that choice, and we recognize that the people that we are working with don't always have that choice. We don't expect those people that we seek to work with to provide emotional support. That's not their job, right? But we are grateful if they do. And people are human. And so it is natural for someone to say, wow, this really took a lot out of you, even if you are there to support them. They may acknowledge that you look exhausted, and acknowledge and be grateful for that, but also understand that you are uncomfortable and pushed yourself for minimal time, and this person that you're showing up for is pushing themselves all the time. Amplify the voices and messages of marginalized populations. This was actually mentioned in the chat earlier, and I chose to ignore it, but because I knew it was coming up. Find the things that you like to follow, learn about them, and then promote them, right? In conversation, on social media, in the break room, in a classroom, wherever it is that you're having these conversations, talk about what you're motivated by, talk about what you're inspired by, and lift up those voices of folks that are doing the work. Going back to giving credit where credit is due, there is a lot of work that's done by white people in this work, but a lot of, you'll notice when you start researching, and let's say the author is a white person, they're often giving credit to a person of color who started that initiative or who prompted them to do their work. And so making sure that you're crediting the original source of that work. A great example of that is the #MeToo movement, which only gained momentum in the late 2010 decade. And really the Me Too movement was started back in the 90s by a woman of color. And it didn't gain momentum back then. And so you do your research, you do your digging, and you find out that the Me Too movement was actually started by a woman of color. But that's not who is recognized for the movement, especially in the first few months as that was coming out and gaining momentum there. And and paying individuals for their time, for their expertise, for their experiences. It's consultative fees, it's training fees, it is acknowledgments. And if a person doesn't take payment for what they're doing, if they can't take payment or they choose not to take payment, find out if there's another way to lift them up. Find out if there's a way. So one of the things that we do as the training committee, when we have an individual who's from who identifies as a marginalized population, who speaks to our group, who gives of their time, most of them are not willing to take money for the role that they've played. But what we have arranged is that we can purchase one of their favorite books that they recommend reading as we do this work, and we donate it to a local library so that folks can continue that work. So again, paying them somehow for their time, acknowledging that they are worthy of that, and it is critical that we hear from them. So it's really critical that we acknowledge and pay people for their time and experiences. Be patient. Absolutely be patient. Change takes time. Whether you're trying to influence an individual, a group of people, or a system, change absolutely takes time. It's slow progress that actually makes the change. And I find that cohorts and colleagues in this work can get really frustrated really fast, right? Because we're waiting for some things to change, but we know that change takes time. We know that we've gotten to the position of where we're at for, after decades and hundreds of centuries of years. And so changing things and learning and relearning and unlearning is going to take us time. So be patient. I've learned in the systems change realm that if you push people, they push back. And but if you walk alongside people and if you kind of meet them where they are and do some gentle push-pull, you're going to get a lot farther, right? So be patient with the work, but keep pushing. Don't just give up. Show up. So avoid performative allyship. All right. Be a part of something bigger than you. Take action. Volunteer. All of those really critical things. So when you say, like, how am I an ally? These are like the 4 things that people say. This is what you should do. Avoid the performative allyship. Be a part of something bigger. Take action. Volunteer. Do something. And a lot of you are here because you're wanting to take action. You're being a part of a bigger conversation. And I love that. So you're already starting to show up. But all the things before that we just talked about are important in allyship as well. Okay, so let's recap. Got a short little video for you to recap what we just talked about.
Hey friends, so I'm trying something different with my setup and I don't know if it's working, but you will deal. Imagine your friend is building a house and they ask you to help, but you've never built a house before. So it'd probably be a good idea for you to put on some protective gear and listen to the person in charge. Otherwise, someone's gonna get seriously hurt. Look, I'm helping! It's the exact same idea when it comes to being an ally. An ally is a person that wants to fight for the equality of a marginalized group that they're not a part of. We need your help building this house, but you probably should listen so you know what to do first. Let's do this. So here are my 5 tips for being a good ally. Understand your privilege. Now, a lot of people get hung up on the word privilege, so let me break it down for you nice and easy. Privilege does not mean that you are rich, that you've had an easy life, that everything's been handed to you and you've never had to struggle or work hard. All it means is that there are some things in life that you will not experience or ever have to think about just because of who you are. It's kind of like those horses that have those blinders on. They can see just fine. There's just a whole bunch of stuff on the side that they don't even know exists. So for example, there are currently 29 states where you can legally be fired for being gay, and there are 34 states where you can legally be fired for being trans. Now, as a straight cis woman, those are things that I don't have to ever think about if I don't want to. I'm not gonna be fired because I'm straight, and I'm not gonna be fired because I am cis. So it makes sense that before I can fight for the rights of others, I have to understand what rights I have and others don't. That's privilege. Listen and do your homework. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it's not possible for you to learn if you aren't willing to listen. So you gotta know when to zippa the lippa. I don't know. You get what I mean. But that's the thing that's so cool about social media. There are so many people sharing their stories all around the world and connecting with people that they normally would never get a chance to without the power of the internet. So do your homework. Start reading blogs, tweets, news articles, and stories so that you can get caught up on the issues that are important to the communities that you want to support. Speak up, but not over. If the Fight for Equality was a girl group, the Ally wouldn't be the lead singer or the second lead singer. They'd be Michelle. An ally's job is to support. You want to make sure that you use your privilege and your voice to educate others, but make sure to do it in such a way that does not speak over the community members that you're trying to support or take credit for things that they are already saying. This isn't Mario Kart. Stay in your lane. Realize that you're going to make mistakes and apologize when you do. Nobody's perfect. Unlearning problematic things takes time and work, so you are bound to mess up and trip and fall. But don't worry, you can brush yourself off and get right back up. And back up! Just remember that it's not about your intent, it's about your impact. So when you get called out, make sure to listen, apologize, commit to changing your behavior, and move forward. Last but certainly not least, actually the most important thing on this list is remember that ally is a verb. Saying you're an ally is not enough. You gotta do the work. 1 through 4. 1 through 4. As always, there are links in the video description box to some of the things I mentioned in this video, along with some resources that have been really helpful for me as I've gone along in my journey to be more conscious. So I want to hear from you in the comments. What are some sites that you suggest checking out, and what are some things that have helped you become a better ally? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye! Working, but you...
That was just a horrible paused face that I stopped on. I apologize. All right, great. So somebody didn't see the video, but somebody did see the video. So I'm not exactly sure what happened there. Okay, so I've got, okay. I think the large majority saw the video. Okay. All right, so we're just about done. We're just about ready to wrap up. So just next up, some resources. Again, if you put your name and email in the session evaluation, I will make sure to get all of the links to you. But there are lots of great resources available just specifically about allyship. So allyship, the key to unlocking the power of diversity, is a really great article. It's about a 6 to 8 minute read. The guide to being a straight ally actually comes out of PFLAG, the Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays organization. It's a great guidebook. It's 28 pages, I think. So talking about allyship within the LGBTQ community. The podcasts, listen to the Ally Continuum. That's actually just a single podcast, but it's a great piece about Ally Continuum in the workplace. The Diversity Dude has some great stuff about allyship, as well as lots of other things. So he's a great podcast to kind of put in your repertoire. And then Breaking Bread and Building Bridges. Again, if you send me your email in the evaluation, you can get links to all of these things as we send those out. All right, I have not given the evaluation link yet. Okay, and I just passed by the other stuff. So give me just a second. I'm gonna go back one slide here. Okay. So, and now it's of course taking forever to load. Here's my call to action. Everybody wants to know, what can I do, right? So again, I'm gonna prompt you to follow us and interact with us on our social media, Facebook and Instagram. Join us on upcoming programs. Our next Learn Love Livingston series is June 16th, same time here at 10:30 in the morning on Wednesday, June 16th. The focus of our June event will be for Pride Month. And so we'll be talking about terminology and definitions for understanding and acknowledging the LGBTQ plus community. We also will have a really cool youth panel as a part of that conversation. You'll hear from some of our local youth who identify as a part of the community and want to share some things with you on how to be an ally in that particular situation. You can always watch our past programming on our YouTube channel at Livingston Diversity. You can participate in our Pride Month events, which is the next slide coming up. Become a member of the council if you're not already. We've got individual and business opportunities. Partner in our organizational resolutions that's coming up. If you want more information on that, please let me know. Livingston Diversity Council at gmail.com. Support other local diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. LDC is not the only game in town. There's lots of folks that are doing some great inclusive work with regard to diversity, access, equity work. So support those initiatives. Start these brave conversations, continue these brave conversations, and always live, love, and learn intentionally, understanding your impact with other folks. Pride Month is coming up in June, so there's lots of things going on, and a quick shout out to Pride Alliance of Livingston and specifically our Pride Month subcommittee that has done some amazing work in putting together these opportunities for you. Some of these are in person, some of these are virtual, some are free, most are free. I think one is the only one that's a pay required position, so it really meets the needs of hopefully everybody and their comfortability with what our current situation is. So the rainbow reception in June 6th in Brighton, virtual trivia night at your own comfort of your own home, community scavenger hunt out in Brighton and Howell, being a part of something really fun. And there's great prizes for both the virtual trivia night and the scavenger hunt. Our Pride Gathering and Parade, June 20th in Howell. And then we're watching the prom movie at the Howell Historic Howell Theater, June 24th, which is a Thursday. That event is free. Concessions are on you. It's a great family-friendly movie that really is appropriate for everybody to be a part of. So again, there's my contact information. And the last thing I got to do is throw stuff up in the chat with our evaluation link. So you'll have to humor me for a second because I'm not real great about doing that. So I'm going to stop my screen share for a second here. And I would love to open up to any questions if anybody has anything that they would like to add. Or any questions that you might actually have. All right, we're getting to the chat box here. So evaluation link is in your chat box. Please feel free to jump on there. Let us know what you think. Let us know any ideas that you might have for upcoming sessions. And then also make sure you throw your email and your name in the chat or in the evaluation at the end of the form so that we can connect with you and get you all the resources from today's session. So unless there's anything else, again, I appreciate all of you for being here today, taking your time, making this a priority for you, and let us know what we can do to support you. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great afternoon.